Uh, I'm filling in for George today as to try to chair this and get this through. So we'll start with calling the meeting to order and do roll call.
George Bousset,
Here.
Bradley Ray,
Here.
Elizabeth Franek is excused, Pat Kinney,
Here.
Gary Mertig,
Here.
Paul Wilharm, Dan Grady,
Here.
Lissa Radke is excused, and Charlie Ortman.
Here.
Perfect. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Charlie makes motion.
Wilharm will second.
Any discussion? Yes, George.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we invert the order of items 5B and 5C in case I know there may be people that need to leave before the meeting's totally over, and probably the open discussion on planning committee process may be more significant than talking about the publicity.
Are you making a motion?
Sort of, I don't know what the consensus is. If somebody else wants to make a motion, I'll second it.
I'll make the motion that George stated.
Okay.
Okay,
With
so
George
the motion is to invert the order of 5B and 5C in the agenda. I second that.
So we have a motion to modify the agenda. I guess we'll go do all of those in favor of the modifying the agenda.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Motion carries. So now we have the motion to approve the agenda, the modified agenda. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any public comments? Is there anybody in the room? Anybody online? Does not look like there's anybody online or anybody in the room for public comments. Public comments. All right, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the October 29th meeting.
Pat will second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to discussion action items. Start with 5A, unfinished September 30th agenda. We had a room scheduling conflict and didn't get to all of that stuff. So the 2016 comprehensive plan status progress reports, brief status and 2016 comp plan goals, comprehensive plan goals, objectives, and action items by element. 5 minutes to discuss by each committee sub-chair. So we'll start with number 1, intergovernment cooperation. Charlie Ortman.
Didn't we agree to start at item C? Wasn't that the? I thought you wanted to invert the.
Yep, it was going to go A and then C and then B.
All right, thank you. My apologies. I'm waiting on our input from the questionnaire that NWRPC is going to do. Otherwise, I've already written some or prepared some additional comments for the intergovernmental cooperation chapter, which is basically a checklist for those that would have opportunities to intergovernmentally cooperate, to trigger them to think about who they might react with when they're doing their daily business. So far, that's all I have, but I envision more as we get deeper in with NWRPC. Thank you.
Number 2, so trends and issues. Lissa is not here. So I think we'll just go ahead and move on to number 3, which is also with Liz not being here, with cultural resources and community facilities. Therefore, how about Pat on agriculture, forestry, and natural resources?
So on the ag piece, the county is required to have a farmland preservation plan, which is incorporated into this. And that's updated every 10 years. And that's in the process of being finished as far as the update and then being sent to the county board in the not too distant future. So there's that in the works. The county also has a forestry plan that is approved by the board. So that's in place. It's a fairly lengthy document also. So I got, you know, as I read back on the 2016 comp plan and I went back and looked at that again because it's, you know, 8, 9 months since we started. So looking back at that, and it really struck me that with goals and objectives, those are fairly brief. I don't recall us talking about goals and objectives. And so one of the things I want to be cognizant of is I could put my perspective on what I think for ag and forestry in there. And given my background, I have lots of things I like and lots of things I'd like to see change, but I also realize there's laws and people own their property and they can do as they please, which is why the farmland preservation plan is totally voluntary. So the question is, you know, what's important to who? And so we haven't even as a committee, to my knowledge or recollection, talked about those goals and objectives. And then it occurred to me as I was looking at the scope of work, which was on the July 21st agenda from Northwest Regional Planning, when we talk about questions in the questionnaire, those questions should reflect our goals and objectives. So now when I think about the goals and objectives in the questionnaire or the questionnaire, does that adequately reflect what we as a committee are looking for on goals and objectives? Again, so what piece on, you know, ag and forestry have we adequately covered what at least as a committee we think is important? All of which led me to a lot of thinking about where we are at in process. So I'll leave that for the item 5C when we get to that. Because I don't understand what I can do right now that's actually productive without it actually being counterproductive to, you know, asking people for their time or energy or taking up Northwest Regional Planning staff time that doesn't fit into their flow of work. So we'll get to 5C.
You got something, Charlie? Go ahead.
I could offer you some strategies that might work. What I do with mine, the things that I'm concerned about or been tasked with, I use the AI out there now. So what I would do is, what are the current obstacles to preserving our natural resources? Just that AI search will get you enough to make your eyes water. And then you pick out the ones you can isolate it down to locally. But there's a lot of good stuff to be found using that. And then, of course, you use your discretion to tailor it and make sure it's vetted. But the threats to farmland appendix that I wrote, that was, well, I didn't write it, that I compiled was all from people who have already researched these things. It was just, they were all put in one list, and then you could go, well, what can we do about it? And then it gives you takes everything that anyone's done anywhere about it, and then see if we can do it. And if we can't, then you can ask for help. That's the legislative ask of that strategy. But I just thought I'd tell you. And if you want me to give you some examples, I could do that too.
Go ahead, Pat.
So that sort of content should be in the farmland preservation plan update. And it should be consistent with the goals and objectives of the comp plan because it's embedded within the comp plan. So we haven't talked about goals and objectives. So we don't know if there's going to be consistency on what's important there. But objectives should also be measurable. So if we're going to put an objective in the comp plan or in the farmland preservation plan, it should be something that's measurable, which also means that we should have the legal authority to take some sort of course of action where there's an opportunity to address something as opposed to something that's wishful thinking. So there's those things, but you know, ask yourself how much of that ended up in the document you saw last week.
Go ahead.
A good part did, but the beauty of that was, so that was brought back to the committee. We beat the heck out of it and we put in what we felt was reasonable. And that's what you'll get if you decide to approach it that way here. Obviously, some of it's not going to be applicable, but others of it will be, oh, wow, you know, like data centers. The information on data centers is there's a ton out there now, and all the bad stuff that's happened to every other community we can prepare for. Should we decide to prepare an ordinance, you know, that tells them, yeah, you can come here, but this is what you can't do, or this is what we need you to do, based on the bad and good experiences that have already been, you know, experienced by other communities.
Go ahead, George.
Right. I don't want to get into it too deep, but I watched the Farmland Planning Preservation Committee recording last night, and it made me wonder whether farmland preservation process is out of date, if it's really even meaningful anymore. So that's something maybe to tuck in our back of our minds. I'm not sure it's worth all the effort. And I don't want to go into it deeply, but I just want to raise that in our thoughts.
Well, George, you're doing better than me watching the committees that we're not even on, where I was not at the last meeting and I still have not watched that video. But my full-time job has really gotten in the way of a lot of this stuff. But anything else on agriculture, forestry, or natural resources? We'll go ahead and move on to Paul with transportation.
Specifically, I don't have anything to report on transportation. Generally, I've read the 2016 comprehensive plan, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around everything.
Perfect. George, you actually gave us some stuff in the packet on utilities.
Right. Carisha, can you throw up that first one? Okay. So my perspective is this is not that hard. We have a plan that was done in 2016. It's pretty decently written. It has vision, goals, and objectives and action items. And my starting point is to go back and look at that plan and see whether those goals and objectives still fit and whether the action items make sense. So I've gone back and looked at the ones that relate to physical utilities. And if you can scroll that to number 1 action step there, please. The first one was about broadband. And it was, identify stakeholders and convene meetings and who was responsible, county board, when, short term, resources needed, funding, and invite CenturyLink representatives to send updates, priority, not high. And I still really don't know what happened in the last 10 years. I know that a lot did happen, but I haven't gotten deep enough into it to actually answer that question yet. But answering that question will be a baseline for what I suggest to go into the plan going forward. Because some of these things may have been accomplished, some not, some might not be relevant anymore, and some might be important. So if I go to action step 2 here, what's about renewable energy sources. And I know there's been quite a bit done with that. Don't know the details of it. I don't know whether I can report that we actually did this. The responsibility was given to the Finance and Economic Development Committee to hold a seminar regarding what area business and county currently doing related to renewable energy. Likely that was done, but I don't know. Had a short-term fuse, didn't state any resources needed, and had one person voted that it was a priority. Those stars, those asterisks on priority, were how many committee members thought it was important. And if you look at the plan, not many of them got multiple stars. This next one was item 3, had to do with privately owned water treatment systems. And I did get a nice note back from Bruce Blakeman explaining what had happened there. I haven't put it all together, and there might be more. I checked with Health and Human Resources. They really didn't have much to say about this, except for their inspections related to restaurants and Airbnb type arrangements. Who was responsible? In this case, it was zoning and Health and Human Services. Had a medium-term fuse, which meant like 3 to 5 years. Didn't state any resources needed. Didn't state a priority, and I don't have a final status on that yet. The next item was number 4, was to plan and implement energy efficiency and renewable energy for county facilities, and that was remember this was written 10 years ago. County administrator and UW Extension. It had a short fuse, meaning less than 3 years, and didn't state resources. And I think something's been done, but I don't know exactly what, and I have to find that out. Action step number 5 here had to do with cellular providers, and it was assigned to the chair of the board and UW Extension, and not sure what was done with that. And then the last one relating to physical utilities had to do with a county objective of 25 by 2025. The idea is that the county facilities would be 25% renewable energy by this year. Do we know, Dan, whether that came about or not?
When you're done, I'll address all the action steps.
I beg
and
your
tell
pardon?
When you're done, I'll address all the action steps and tell you where we are.
Okay. So then move to the next document there, please. Yeah, that one. So then I started to draft up how I would report back to this committee on my piece of responsibility. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to draft up some potential action steps that in my thinking would be appropriate. And I'll reach out to people, experts in the community, and as much public input as I can get from the questionnaire, and decide what I think I would put in a draft to bring back to this committee. So in my thinking, the first action step under utilities would be, evaluate land use and zoning implications of potential future electric power sources, large-scale solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, gas, coal, wood chips, et cetera, and present summary to the county board. I mean, this is since a 20-year horizon, our energy infrastructure is going to change. Action step 2 that I drafted up was evaluate land use and zoning implications of potential future utilities infrastructure in ground and overland electrical transmission, which I know Excel is doing, cell towers, in-ground fiber optic, telephone and overland communications and pipeline systems and routes. So who would be responsible? In my preliminary thinking, it would be land conservation and zoning. Near term, need to do some research and benchmarking, and it was, at least a 2-star priority for me. And then the third one I just dreamed up to put on this example was evaluate land use and zoning implications of potential future large-scale data center operations and present summary report to county board, because this is data centers are a new business opportunity across the country, and this county would have to determine whether we want to take advantage of that business opportunity or not, and if so, how. So to me, these things belong in our planning thinking. And my way of doing this, if I can't pull together a committee of citizen volunteers, which might still be hard to do, I at least will do my own research by reaching out to a lot of different people in the community and getting their input, looking at what the questionnaire says, looking at what the townships say, getting any other feedback that we can, and putting together a draft for my section of the plan and bringing it back to this committee for discussion and input and revision. So that's what I have to say on that topic.
Go ahead, Erica.
Maybe George, you just forgot this, but I guess what's really, really important to me is that we haven't seen any updated actual data about any of this yet. And so I don't know how we get from not having any data to actually having prioritized action steps on specific issues. I think it's great to kind of like project, but for a committee to actually decide how that might play out in the comp plan itself, I feel like we're really, really early on that scale.
I think, go ahead, Dan.
Well, I just want to address some of these action items. If we go back to like utilities, broadband providers, that's already being done as we speak. Part of the Inflation and Reduction Act, there was the BEAD program was created, and the federal government charged each state with carrying out broadband expansion. So the Public Service Commission is already doing that. They put out it out for bids. We don't know who won yet. That hasn't been made public, but we do know that Novato is going to be doing a lot of broadband in part of the county. We know that Bug Tussle is going to be doing some of the southern part of the county. We know that Bayfield Wireless is going to handle Morris Mellon area. So this is not going to only be wires, it's going to be fixed wireless too. So that's already being handled by the Public Service Commission. And the county, any county input was taken out of it by the Trump administration. For our renewable energy,
So
That's good.
Dan, let me interrupt real quick
Yeah.
on that. You're saying on that broadband, when we did the support to Novato to
yeah, It didn't matter.
That didn't matter after all.
The Trump administration changed the rules.
Okay.
If I go to POUTS, action step 3, those rules are set up by the Department of DSPS. We just enforce their rules. So the state is really the one who's responsible for setting up new rules and new requirements. We just enforce them. Energy efficiency at county facilities. We already have a solar panel on the roof of this building, and HHS buys electricity from the solar farm out on Bound Farm Road. We also did apply for a grant, one of Erica's first grants, to bring solar power to every county facility, every town facility that was interested. Bad River, charging stations, but the Trump administration killed that whole program. So we're not going to get any money on that until there's a new administration, because the county certainly doesn't have the money to do it. Cellular providers, again, that's regulated by the Public Service Commission and the private market. The county does not have a say. If somebody wants to put up a cell tower, say here in the city council can't tell them, no, you can't do that. They have to let them do it. That's already in state statute. So that's already being handled. I already talked about the energy goal on number 6. We go to utilities, future power sources. Again, that's the Public Service Commission who decides what is going to happen. If Xcel wants to do another wood burning plant, they would have to go through the state, the DNR and the Public Service Commission. If they want to put a high transmission line through the area, they'd have to get permission from the state. The county has no say in the matter, nor do we get any of the tax dollars. The state decided to keep all that money. So the state is responsible. Again, future utilities, that's still the state. Counties have no say in that matter, neither do cities, towns, or villages. The state legislature has taken away lots of local power. And future land use for a large-scale data center, yeah, that would be zoning committee, but they're limited in what they can do. The permit would be issued by the state, by the DSPS, and we would have no say in the matter. What we could do is pass things like a noise ordinance for any building over, 100,000 square feet can emit only X number of decibels of noise. We can do that kind of stuff, but whether or not that would hold up in court is debatable. If the state wants to move if a data center wants to come here and the state says it's happening, it's happening. We don't have a choice. Now, would they come here? No. Xcel Energy doesn't have enough electricity to supply a data center. It would take them at least 5 years to get the power here. Because there was a threat of a data center not too long ago, and I talked to some people at Xcel, and they said there's no way there's enough power. So, we're limited on a lot of the stuff the state does everything. I mean, they take our power away, and they want to say what business can come up. I mean, it's really a state that controls almost all of this stuff.
Go ahead, George.
So this is exactly how I envision this process going forward, is that we come in with a draft or something to actually talk about, something of substance that committee members can react to and give feedback and improve the draft. And it's my perspective that we need to run this as a parallel process. When we have our meetings with Northwest Regional Planning, we need to let Northwest Regional Planning run the process so we stay on track. But in order to develop our vision of where we want to be and the things we want to work on, we need to be developing that, in my opinion, at the subcommittee level as we go along. And to me, it's very helpful to have a meeting where we're just the committee and we can talk about our processes. And it would be my intent to take this input and come back in the first quarter and show you guys a draft of what I think would make a good utilities objective goals and action items going forward, because the first document here was only a review of the 2016 plan and whether anything happened on it or not. So it's kind of like, oh, those things happen in different ways. But now I'm looking forward, what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years? And I need to get input from the community and bring it back to you folks and see what you think I draft makes sense. Because Northwest Regional Planning is not going to be able to write that for us. And from my perspective, there's enough background data in the existing plan to see as a baseline to move forward, especially when we know whether or not things happened or not. And we know what the issues are in our community. We actually live here. You know, we have a lot of friends, we have a lot of contacts. We actually have the ability to draft something up that would be quite reasonable. So that's my approach.
I look at the first document there is not a bad idea for each of the subcommittees to kind of lay out what was in the plan of the goals and the objectives of each section. And then have we done any progress? And the nice thing about making this a standing committee, we'll be able to actually track that as we go on an annual basis, where 10 years ago, when it was last together, there's been no standing committee to kind of track that. So we're left with, hey, this goal has now changed and it's not even in the county responsibility anymore. So it's state responsibility. We can't necessarily even direct anything. So that might be a good spot to start, is just truly just a review of the old plan. What did we hit? What did we not hit? And that maybe is just the baby step to say, and before we jump to, without the updated data, to trying to get action items, maybe that's the next step. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Charlie.
On the screen, you're on the POWT there. The state uses the abbreviation POWTS for private on-site wastewater treatment system. So that language needs to be updated as you go. But on the term before you got on the board, George, I was on zoning, and we spent considerable time dealing with people in the county with holding tanks, putting in sump pumps and just pumping out the water so they didn't have to call a septic hauler to have it pumped. Long story short, a few decades back, when most people found out their soils didn't pass for conventional or a mound system, they put in a holding tank. And a board member that had been on here for decades said, well, what's the point of charging them a fee if they're just putting in a holding tank? It's not like it's going in the soil anyway. And there's truth to that. So it turned out that an awful lot of people in Ashland County have put in holding tanks because it's the cheapest option, both in terms of the system and the lack of fees at the time. So I think we've got a fee now. Krisha could look it up. I think we have a fee for a holding tank now. I think we changed that, if I recall. But we also did something else, and this, I think, hopefully is having an effect. We charge a fee, and I think it was $7 a year to start with, and we might have bumped it up since then. But I think it was $7, and it goes on your tax bill, and it went towards record management. So the zoning office hopefully knows who has a holding tank or other septic system in Ashland County, and therefore they can monitor them better. Bayfield County, trust me, does a really good job of keeping track of you and when you've pumped. Ashland County, far less so. So even just record management, we should be doing better now than when this plan was written. And that fee of, I think, was $7. $12 now goes towards record management so the county can monitor that better. And my understanding is we're making progress on things being hauled and more people understanding if they're going to build, they might want to consider, even though it's expensive, bringing in the material for a mound system, because in the long run, that can be less expensive than a holding tank. So that's a little more progress since 2016.
I just want to, I guess, talk about the whole purpose of this. This is to create a pathway to a vision we have for our community. And a lot of the steps to that pathway might be blocked by the legislature. Doesn't mean we leave them out. We just put down there who's responsible for us. The board, we have to advocate for legislative change. And that would be the first step. But to enhance, to promote, to achieve our vision, there's plenty of things in our vision that the state already blocks. For instance, we can't ban single-use plastic bags, probably one of the #1 sources of plastic in your brain. Do we get rid of it? No. We advocate for the legislature to give us a control back. I mean, we can't do anything until they do. But I don't think we should write our plan and leave out things we know the state doesn't approve right now, because this should be the first place that the legislature goes to find what they're gonna do. This is the place where the citizens have spoke. This is our poor man's ALEC, or our poor man's, ear or voice to our assembly. It's the only one we have. So I think we should write this without any regard to what laws help or hinder us. And then after we've got all the steps in that achieve our vision, we see how they square up against the laws of the land. And then we either do those that we can or advocate that they let us start doing the things where they aren't. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I completely agree. And if you thought I was saying to leave it out if we don't have any control of it, that's not what I was trying to say. It was, but yeah. But no, it's just what our action item is going to be something different if we don't have control than advocate. It's advocation as opposed to doing something to get it so we do have control would be the action. And so thinking of that. But yeah, did you have something else, George? Well, is it worthwhile for each of these subcommittees to do something like the first document that George put together of kind of just laying out all of the objectives within the plan of each of these 8 sections, and having each person kind of present on what we've done or what we need to look at?
I think that's exactly what NWRPC
that
is
is
going to do.
that is
They're
what they're
gonna
doing.
take the
So
original one and tell us about it,
okay,
and then offer others. It doesn't mean we can't act on it ahead of that, but that will be part of their strategy. I'm almost positive.
go ahead, George.
So the way I see the difficulty is that we need to be prepared in advance ourselves to respond when the consultants come back to this part of the process. Otherwise, we're going to end up with having meetings like our last one where we're going through some detail, and just not really getting anywhere. But if we can come to that part of the calendarization of the plan in the scope of work, and we're locked and loaded, we're ready to talk about it. And that's what I'm hoping that can happen.
Go ahead, George.
Are we up to housing?
Yes, we're on to housing. And I don't have anything to report at all. I apologize on housing. Dan, go ahead.
Charlie, do you have anything to report? Yeah, Beezer Avenue.
Microphone, please.
The 130 to 150 unit apartment complex on Beezer across from the police station, that's a go. So that should
Have they both broke ground or?
I don't believe they've broke
Okay.
ground yet, but it's going to happen. And then there's some more things I'm not exactly sure, but there's some more housing possibilities south on Beezer, around the Beezer School. That's a zone that's TIF supported for housing. So we can, there's some other possibilities happening. I'm not sure where they're at yet, but that big one is going, and that should do a lot to relieve the marketplace.
Yeah, because the TIF district included the Beazer School there, and the library is going to be moving out of there soon, and that whole building could be converted. There's nothing else in that building right now other than the library, right? There was the karate or judo thing in part of it there, but yeah, Erica.
Event Horizon is there now.
Okay, that's
It's a yoga and meditation studio.
event. Right. Go ahead, George.
Just like to point out by adding that the Enbridge work at Marengo to develop housing for the workforce to work on the pipeline will then, I'm thinking it's going to remain as housing. Dan, do you know better?
It's actually a camp. It's going to be a campground afterwards. And you know, well, I don't want to say anything in a public meeting. So,
So,
but it's going to be a campground.
Yeah, but I understand, and I've been there several times. The way that's being set up, potentially that could be turned into a mobile home park because there's pads, there's electric, sewer, water. So the owner who gets that after they're done with it can decide if he wants to rezone it or whatever the term would be. He could run it as a campground. It's not in a good spot for a campground except maybe during the county fair or overflow. But the way they're setting it up, it could be a mobile home park, a huge mobile home park. So that's a possibility.
How many pads are they going to have there? Do you know?
I don't know, but if you'll go behind a Marengo gas station, if you're down that way sometime, look, they're really, it's quite a huge area. I can ask Michelle too.
Yeah, and there's a chance it might be available sooner rather than later.
Yeah, what is the time frame right now?
Enbridge wants to break ground as soon as possible.
It-
But like I said, there's some other stuff, but I just don't want to say it in a
yeah,
public meeting that's
well,
recorded.
and the judge still hasn't made his ruling.
Right.
The court case where the tribe claimed that the DNR illegally issued those permits, and the DNR's argument obviously took us 5 years, and Army Corps of Engineers has approved. So that hearing is to the point where the judge within the next 30 to 60 days is supposed to make his ruling. But Enbridge has clearly stated they would like to start digging in February.
Yeah.
So.
But I don't know how long the construction phase was supposed to last. 2 years? Okay.
I don't know, maybe or less. But again, actually, Krisha, can you hit pause in the recording?
George, go ahead.
yeah, I just had a question whether anybody else knows of any other housing development potentially going on around the county. Do we know of anything else just by word of mouth? No.
Mellon has a area platted out for single family homes. We had talked to them about putting workforce housing there and they weren't interested in it. And I don't think there's anything going on near Butternut. So the only growth in housing is probably going to happen in the city. And the mayor has stated no more workforce housing. So.
Then to move to number 8 is land use and economic development. Gary, you got anything?
Well, just that I've read our plan multiple times. I've seen some other plans, and I'm kind of waiting to see what Northwest Regional Planning comes in with. That actually, I have to be honest, I'm surprised they're not here because they're the ones who are leading this. We're paying them big bucks to do this. And I'd like to see what they have in a general format so I could add to it, pick it apart, say that doesn't fit us. It does fit us. I think we're behind the gun here.
We are, and I could tell you that January, and they had not planned to have a December meeting. This is our November or December meeting. We're having this because George wanted to do the other stuff. But in January, where they're going to talk about issues and opportunity review, and they expect to have the draft plan chapters to be available by then too. So,
Just one other detail, Northwest Regional is contracted for 8 meetings, and I believe have we had 3 or 4 with them already, and we haven't actually gotten into the guts of the plan yet, and so that's why she elected to not be at this meeting, because she wanted to combine on the scope of work would be both month 4 and 5 together for January.
and in February, we'll probably have to do 6 and 7 together just to get caught up.
Well, that is a good transition to go ahead and go to item 5C. If there's nothing else on 5A from anybody. All right, we'll go to 5C about the planning committee process here. Pat, go ahead. Microphone, please.
Oh, boy. So in looking at things again for this meeting, one of the questions I asked myself, where are we? And the answer was I didn't know. So I ended up going back and looking at the scope of work. And so that's in the packet now. And so in that scope of work, the first part, and I'm not clear on this, they've got a 6-page document and they talk about doing a variety of things. I'm not entirely sure, like public and community engagement, George was talking about, going out and talking to people. I'm not exactly sure if there's public engagement and community engagement for each of the topics that we run through for each of the subcommittees or, areas that we each have the 9 elements. Or is that a one-time thing and get input on everything? Is it going by topic? Because it could be different audience. I wasn't clear on which month we're on, but if they state 18 months and after this month, there's 13 months between now and this is supposed to be done, somewhere we've got to start doubling up. So that it isn't really clear to me, other than I'm quite sure we're behind. But then in the process of that, reading about the survey there, it really struck me in terms of the order they're doing things. And this, to me, doesn't make sense. But we were spending a fair bit of time on survey questions, and I don't recall us as a committee even going back and reviewing the objectives, goals and objectives from 10 years ago to see if those are current. Because if you're going to write survey questions, they should correlate with your goals and objectives, or at least your preliminary goals and objectives as we see them. And they pull surveys from other places. And so what that means, in all likelihood, some of those questions will hit things with our goals and objectives, but there also may be gaps where things are important to us and we don't have survey questions. My personal feeling is we should probably at the next meeting run through the goals and objectives in the comp plan from 10 years ago. And I don't mean an hour on this, but 10 or 15 minutes, have a discussion. Yes, keep it. Nope, that's done, or here's a new one. And then have someone, and I don't know who, us or Northwest Regional Planning, look at those questions and ask ourselves, do we have questions that correlate to our goals and objectives? Are we missing something? Or there's maybe too much on something. I personally think we've overdone it on housing, partly because we know we're going to get some housing, and partly we have Northland closing, and we don't know quite yet how that impacts housing. Maybe 2 years from now or 3, we do another survey on housing because we probably are going to have a different situation then. But anyway, the survey questions and the goals and objectives didn't really match. We've got to do some catching up on working through this. We got to turn Northwest Regional Planning loose to do all this background stuff, because it does inform what's done and what's changed. The broadband is a good example of that. It's different now than 10 years ago. And then there's a lot of things we can't change anyway. And so we got to decide, well, how much of that stuff do we want in here? Because if it's nothing we can do about any of it, then got to ask ourselves, what's the point? But I really want to turn Northwest Regional Planning loose. My personal preference is our agendas only have items from them because between, to me at least, the survey, the objectives, we should have that conversation to get the most out of our survey. And I think we should play catch up on the months because we're behind. And having sat through the farmland preservation meetings, and there was one, I think it was last week, I was there. There clearly was not time left in the process because they only want one more meeting for final approval. There was not time left in the process for input from committee members. It was just raced through and we were out of there. And there wasn't time for input. In fact, I mean, it just literally that's how it went. And so I want to leave time, to me personally, when we get to what are our goals or objectives, what's really important, that we've got time to talk about those. In other words, this is 18 months, but I don't think the 18 months is necessarily means equal in time that it takes for us and or North Regional Planning. Some will be a little quicker, but the places where we really want to talk are goals and objectives, and then how do we try to accomplish some of those things. I think those things we need more time. And then when it comes to the final plan, if we're pressed for time, then this is a long plan to read. And then how do you make any meaningful changes? Because they're going to gather data input, background information. And to me, that's almost a starting point for the conversation. What's interesting? What demands an explanation? What can we maybe do something with and potential paths to try to address some of that? And what stuff is clearly just out of our domain and we have to live with it? If we don't have time for those conversations and to do some updates, then we end up with something that's background information, a list of goals and objectives that we support, but no real meaningful way, as George is trying to get to how to do something about something. So I would rather see our agenda stick with Northwest Regional Planning and try to get ahead of schedule with them and carve out time for those points that we think are really important to spend our time, so that we have the time when we get to that.
Go ahead, Erica.
I just, with the coming of the new year, we won't be meeting again until January, I guess. I also did some looking at dates and looking at the scope of work in the past couple of days. The one date that we absolutely have to hit is, at least for grant purposes, is that the grant has to be finalized, paid, everything done by April 2027. Working back from that, Dan and I spoke today, which means that month 18 in the plan, holding a public hearing, really needs to happen in probably September of 26. So we need to actually be done with our work with an absolutely final, publicly presentable plan, right? That's sort of beyond draft stage, has maybe been vetted a few times, but that the public can fully comment on by fall of 26. So working backward, if we went month by month, in January, ideally, we would have been around month 8 in the current scope of work. That would have been the ideal. We will be looking at what it sounds like from Northwest Regional, month 4, 5 within the plan. So if next month we can execute month 4, 5, then we'll need to get through month 18 in 9 months. Which, as Dan said, probably means we need to double up, at least with Northwest Regional's planning here of months, at least twice, maybe 3 times.
Yeah, and the final date could be the end of October when we do budget. We could hold the public hearing, but that would be the latest date. So we really want to have the thing kind of done by the end of August.
Go ahead, Pat.
Another thing I think about is who's going to be on this committee after the election. There's no guarantee that any of us as board members will be back. So I was looking at the scope of work saying, okay, where does my stuff reasonably fall before the election or after, because if it's after, you might say, well, what's the point? I'm not going to be here by the time we get to my stuff. But if it's before, it's like, okay, I better get on the stick. So I think about that. But then I also think as far as planning, maybe for Dan and others that are on the ball with penciling this out, when there's the reorganizational meeting 2 weeks after the election in April, it would be really, really helpful for this committee to be able to make appointments to the planning committee at the reorganizational meeting. Otherwise, you have another gap of several weeks before you even figure out who's been approved to get on this committee. In other words, you got the election the first week of April, 2 weeks later, you reorganize. And if you don't have this committee appointed then, well, now you got another 2 weeks. So you'd lose a month or more just for the committee to meet. And then potentially you have no new people too, all of which makes it harder to keep moving. And then I've taught summer, and I'm guessing Erica has too. Boy, oh boy, it's hard to get people to show up and pay attention and do anything in the summer. That's just how it is. They got other things, they got vacations. And so unfortunately, if we're gonna get to a point where we've got a document to read, it's hitting a time of year where it's really hard to get people's time and attention, all of which to me means during the dead of winter, make as much progress as we can, because you get more time and attention out of people when it's cold out than you do when it's warm out.
George, go ahead.
A couple of points. I wanted to build on what Charlie was saying about using the plan as a tool. That's what I told the Health and Human Services meeting yesterday. I said, the comprehensive plan is an opportunity for Health and Human Services as a department to tell the county board what they see coming at us in the next 10 years and what they will need in terms of resources and how they're thinking about it, because this is a communication mechanism, and it comes from the community and our various departments and committees, and it comes back to the county board. And otherwise we end up with situations where the county board is presented with something at the last minute. They hardly know what to expect, and we're forced into rapid decisions. So I really think the idea of using the planning process as an opportunity, not just a chore, but an opportunity to do the best for the different departments going forward is really, really valuable. I want to say that I had two other things. One, it has to do with this interest in getting the data. And I personally don't quite understand that. It sort of implies like we don't understand our own community and that somehow it's massively changed since the last time we looked around. So I personally don't feel any need for background data from Northwest Regional Planning to do my job in developing a draft utilities element looking forward for goals and objectives. I just don't. Now, because I have this quite different perspective on this whole process, I'm not really sure I'm the right person to chair this committee anymore, because it goes at odds with my way of thinking about how to get the job done. But I'm willing to serve at least through the April elections. But I don't have a lot of confidence in Northwest Regional Planning. To me, that's just a way of meeting a legal requirement, and putting something on the shelf doesn't mean too much. And for me, it's much more important for us to be thinking about what we actually want to see happen in this county and what it means to us. So just want to put that out there. I'm not happy with this focus on Northwest Regional Planning, but I realize it's practical. We have to go through their processes. They'll keep us on legal street. And by the way, I think we've done a lot in terms of keeping on legal street. So we've did this whole public communication requirement, which is the primary legal requirement. And I think we've met all of that requirement already, basically, in de minimis ways, because we have hardly any feedback from the public. But I think that's a big part of getting this done. And going forward, if people just want to plow ahead and wait until we have all that background data to start thinking about objectives, to me, that's not the best way to go, but I'll work with it if that's what people want to do.
Charlie?
Yeah. It's not just background data, it's the questionnaire. And didn't we have a meeting? Maybe this is farmland preservation, but I thought we sat down here with NWRPC, the NWRPC, and they had went over every survey question there was, and we discussed it. And you might not have been here, Pat, I'm not sure. Okay, so we did that. And so what I'm waiting for is their take on my chunk and everyone's chunk of the plan. They're gonna go over those parts of the plan. And they're gonna find stuff with them, and they're gonna find efficiencies, they're gonna find duplications, they just always do. And then they'll discuss their take on our version of that plan now 10 years later. And so they'll feed that to us and we'll go yay or nay, or we'll beat it up somehow or another, and then we'll put our stuff into it and they'll give us the feed. So that's what I'm waiting for, being a veteran of this process. But George, to me, and now I'm talking about what George stated, that's all I wanted to say about the questionnaire. Your take is valuable. We don't want to be the choir here. So I disagree with you about your stand on NWRPC. I'll certainly listen to everything you have to say about it. Everything has room for improvement, including them. So maybe they'll take some stuff from this because of you and improve their process. But I don't think it's a good idea to, I won't say you're diminishing them, but to speculatively think that we probably don't or won't, the value is not there. I think the value is there, but maybe it's not as much as I thought, and maybe it's not as little as you think. So I wouldn't resign the chairmanship over that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Go ahead, George.
So the chair, working with the administrator, has to develop an agenda for a meeting once we figure out a meeting date. And so the last number of meetings, I'll send out that agenda to everybody on this committee in advance. And I get no feedback. So I don't have anybody telling me the agenda should be something different. And if you want the agenda to look different than what I have drafted, you need to say so we can modify the agenda before we come to the meeting. Because I may put together an agenda with a different perspective than some other people would like to go with. Right now, my view is that when Northwest Regional Planning is here, that is basically just their meeting. But I also view is that we ought to have an occasional meeting like this one where they're not present and we can just talk about process and develop our own thinking about where we want the county to go. They can't decide for us where we want the county to go. And I think that questionnaire is useful, but I think it's only part of the equation.
Go ahead, Pat.
Well, given the limited number of meetings they're going to attend, we will be having meetings, I assume for sure, where they're not here. George called me last night because of the farmland preservation plan update. Last December, Alyssa Radke organized 3 meetings on the ag piece. So I said, yes, I'll attend those. We did it via Zoom. And then I've been on the farmland preservation through last week. And George and I talked about this, and I'm going to say this and respond to things George said. When I was asked to serve on that committee, I asked who was proposed to be on it. And when I heard the names, I said yes, because I honestly believe when we got done with that, we were actually going to accomplish something and do something. And Charlie, if you remember the first meeting, almost right away, you said, you're only going to do this if we're going to accomplish something and have something to show for it. It's not going to be a plan that sits on the shelf. So anyway, go through the process, and in my mind, and George, you thought it looked like, March or so we should wrap that up. And that probably is about when it should be wrapped up for what I would believe needs to be done to address it, to get it to a point where I would find it acceptable and be willing to have my name on it. We ran out of time on that to get to where we needed to get because there's a deadline on getting it done. So there's the reality of deadlines again. So we get these deadlines, and unless we move it along on the front end, we run out of time on the back end, which is where you can read it and go, we need to explain this. We need to understand this. Here's an area we should do more on because it strikes me as important. All we really have at that point from the thing I sat through, to me, is a starting point for the meaningful conversations. And we just ran out of time to get any more meaningful. And I don't know if Charlie knows this, but after that meeting, I sent in my resignation from that committee. I'm not willing to have my name on that plan because it's not far enough along on something I'm willing to have my name on. And there's things that need to be addressed. in the 2016 plan, which was not done by Northwest Regional Planning, on page 1.3, there's a paragraph on data consistency. They literally talk about inconsistencies between the comp plan and the farmland preservation plan. They don't mention what data is inconsistent. So at least as a reader, you can say, okay, here's what's in, the comp plan, here's what's in the farmland preservation plan that they see as inconsistencies, or even tell you where to note that. So as a reader of a document, if I'm reading that, I don't know what to trust or not to trust. And honestly, I wouldn't bother reading it, because if you tell me there's inconsistent data, I don't know what to trust or not to trust. I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to, because it's a waste of my time to read a document. You tell me data's inconsistent. I showed this to another person who has a strong background in math. And the reaction there is the same as mine. If there's data inconsistency and you know it, you need to find the explanation for that inconsistency. There is an explanation, and it needs to be found and identified. And the farmland preservation, there's inconsistencies in there that I identified, one of which just absolutely jumps off the page at me. And there's no attempt to, I don't know if anybody else even sees it. So I'm reading it and I'm paying attention to, numbers and data, sticks in my head when I read the stuff. And, there's stuff like, nope, this is impossible. That can't be. There's other things that demand an explanation, because if they're really accurate in data, they need to be corrected, not to mention percents that were corrected incorrectly. So there's that stuff, and there's stuff too. And if we don't move this along, so George, what I'm trying to tell you is, you have my full sympathy on how you want to approach this. You really do. Because I literally just spent 12 months of my life, starting in December and then continuing in February, because I believed it was going to be worth the time for what I perceived to be what my time was worth at this point in my life. We just ran out of time. We didn't get to some things that were important. So I can understand how hard it can be to move this along, because I just went through it. On the other hand, our chair, Murdoch here, has said, we just need to get through this. We need to let Northwest Regional Planning get us through the process. We have to have it done, just like the farmland preservation plan. You have to have it done. Is it the best we can do? It's not going to be in either case. There's no question. That's the reality. And that can be hard, because when we volunteer our time, especially because that was volunteer, we weren't paid for that. You do it because you believe something worthwhile will come out of it for the time you put in. This we get paid a little bit, but it's not relevant to us. So are we willing to put in for time for something that's less than we would like? The reality is we've got deadlines, we've got limited budget, and so it can be really hard to put the time in and knowing that it's not going to be what you would want. So I fully understand where you're coming from, George. If you really wanted to step back as chair, I'm willing to chair this, but I would do it only because I know it has to be gone through and done, not because I think that's the best way to get to the product we would like. We're just not going to have time and budget and resources to do what you would like to do, because that's just not the reality of this. And I've accepted that after the last 12 months of hoping things were like what you were hoping.
I think that creating the planning committee as a standing committee will fix a lot of the concerns that have been being addressed here. It's not a committee that's ad hoc coming together right before and then have a deadline. We're going to be able to improve and come in 2035, whether any of us are here still in 2035, but there will be that committee will be working on this throughout, that a lot of these issues and things we're talking about, we might not even need Northwest Regional Planning, because we're constantly doing the things. And I think there'll be benefits. And so, yes, we have a deadline that has to be done for this one, but I think there's nothing stopping us that just goes ahead and continues the work in 2027 after this is all done, and gets it to where can we not update the plan at any time? We could update it along the way, and we can fix some of these things. And so I think maybe the best compromise is, from what Charlie is leaning towards and what Pat has said, is that we're going to go with Northwest Regional Planning, and follow their lead on this one. And then once they're done and we have the plan and we get it approved, we're going to strive for this committee and whoever makes up that committee to improve it and make it the best plan that possibly can be over the next 10 years. So when that new plan comes up, it's already good. And then it's not even, hey, we need to rewrite one. All we need to do is say we're changing the dates on this one. And that's what I think is what we should be striving for is the long range plan. We got the short term goal, but we'll work on the long range plan as we move forward. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I just want to build on what I understand Brad have been saying, because I don't really think everybody realizes that we've accomplished a lot because we're doing two things simultaneously. We're establishing the process for the regular planning committee at the same time that we're working on the comprehensive plan. And that's one of the tensions in the process. And one of the reasons I put on the agenda today to let us think about whether or not 2016 goals have been accomplished, because that's what an ongoing committee should be doing on a comprehensive plan. But I also think the 2016 plan is an awfully good starting point for anybody that's looking at any of these elements. The committee decides who chairs the committee. And I would be happy if the committee would decide at this time, we need a board member to be the chair of the committee. You can't be a non-board member, I don't think. But if Pat's willing to take over the chair of the committee, I'd be happy to yield to that if the committee would agree to that here today.
Just a point of order. I don't know, since it's not on the agenda, if we can actually do that.
That's correct.
Good point. Yeah.
It would have to be the next agenda.
So it's something that we could put on the agenda for a future meeting to do that. And I think that's a good discussion, but I don't think we can do that at this time.
Well, I would tend to agree with you on a point of order because we're discussing process. The agenda item is process. So what I'm going to do is at this point resign from the chairmanship of the committee, although I'll stay on the committee. So now you're left without a chairperson.
Well, that puts me as the chair because I was elected as vice chair. And so at this meeting, thank you, George. The whole point was that you were going to stick around and see this to the end. That's why I agreed to do the vice chair. I see how you operate.
It's a vote of confidence, Brad.
So, Mr. Chairman,
It's still vice chair at this point, but
well, I'm technically your chairman now, but I will put on election of chair in the next agenda so the committee can decide whomever they want.
that'll work. And I'll work with you on the agenda too.
George, I
Okay.
think the reality of this is, given the limited time and resources and the requirements from the state on elements, et cetera, it's something that we have to go through. It's not going to end up being everything that it could possibly be that we would like. It is a standing committee, which, you're well aware of that history. So we've got some catch up for 10 years on what have we done, but then after that, then it's, we keep it current and we can address it. So for example, there's things related to zoning that come to my mind after the farmland preservation discussions. And even if those things don't end up in the document, I'm aware of some of those things that we could possibly do to address some things. So what really matters is you have a group of people who take something and want to do something with it, regardless of what is or isn't in writing. I would be happy to see you remain as chair or get reelected as chair, but I think we're to a point on schedule where we've got to give Northwest Regional Planning the meeting time when they're with us, and then we've got to work on doing our part to stay up with that scope of work they have, or we just plain literally run out of time. And then once they do their stuff, then it's like the last thing I was on, where's the time to talk about it and change anything and do anything with it? That's just...
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, just one last thing on process. At one point in time, I thought we might actually have groups of people working in subcommittees that we would gather some people from the community to talk over particular issues. And I was concerned about meeting space. So I did, it might not come into play at all, but I did talk to Stuart Matthias, who is the fire chief, and we're welcome to book time at the fire station. Like if one of us had a group that wanted to meet in the evening when the courthouse is closed, because as the courthouse opens, probably going to incur extra expense. And the firehouse is open 24/7. There's always somebody there. So we're welcome to request and book use of that meeting room. Even though it's really big, you could still have a small group meeting there if you wanted to. Just wanted to let everybody know.
Thanks, George. Any other discussion on the planning committee process? Charlie?
I just want to say, the 2016 plan, we were all pretty happy with it, but we all absolutely knew it fell short of what we wanted, had we had enough time. For instance, every department would have had a working document derived from the plan that provided the direction for their department. We only got two, extension and land water conservation, but that's two more than we had before that. So we welcome this. At that time, there wasn't the capacity to have a standing committee. Now that standing committee is just a solution for everything if we work it right. And so at some point, I envision we'll take out of the comprehensive plan all those, we'll parse out those pieces that apply to one department, and we'll create a working document for them that will drive their actions. And there'll be a reference to it on the agenda items, and we'll just work it in, and it'll be a driver. It won't be a dusty weight holding down something on a shelf. That was the whole intention in 2016. Didn't get there, but we're so much closer now, and it's just going to cascade. So while I agree with your sentiments, at the end of this thing, we'll be far better than we were before, but we'll still have improvement potential. Thank you.
And I hope you stick around, George, to see that through, to see some of the stuff that you've been putting time into. So if nothing else on planning committee process, we'll go back to 5B, unfinished from the October 29th agenda due to scheduling conflict, public awareness. There's the December newsletter, press release, and group photo. We never got the group photo. And I'm wearing a wrong shirt for a group photo. I'm not all dressed up nice. But I almost wonder if we wait one more month to get a group photo, since we have two committee members missing at that time. But I'll take that. I do want to, in the packet, and there's printouts for everybody on the plan, and thanks for putting that together. George, you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank Erica. That's basically Erica's press release.
Okay.
That is the text in that. And I want to thank Carisha for putting together the photos, which look much better in color on our website, but the printed in color costs about 5 times as much. So I'm a cheap guy. And so everybody, please sum and distribute them around as you are maybe capable. And I agree with Brad about deferring on any kind of photo, but Charlie raised a really good point in an Ag and Extension Committee meeting. And it says that, you want to repeat what you had to say about publicity and marketing?
Extension has a marketing issue. They're very humble people, and most people don't know what they do, and they don't brag. But to me, it's the most important committee we have. They're solving problems. They're Extension. It's a Wisconsin idea in action. Extension applies education to solve problems and improve people's quality of life. That's always been their mission. That was Abe Lincoln's dream. That's a land-grant college. The whole goal was everything they create, the knowledge they create, is supposed to get out to the people that paid for it. And that's all they're trying to do is avail you of all the best knowledge. They want to inform every debate with the best knowledge, but they don't market that. So they struggle to stay perceived as relevant. And if people knew what they did, they'd want them everywhere. So we don't want to have that problem here. Right, George?
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is, thus far, we really have the same problem. We not succeeding in our marketing to the public of the awareness of this program, even though we're meeting all legal requirements. Still, we probably need some creative thinking on that, in my opinion.
Any other comments? Oh, Pat, go ahead.
I don't know that we've agreed on a group photo. I just assume not have one personally.
I was acting as chair and I said, it's a great idea. We're going to do it. You could, but we're not going to do it today. So just skip the next meeting and then we'll.
I'll break out my clothes that I wear to the farm, so I won't be appropriately dressed at that point. We didn't get any input from the public on the farmland preservation meetings either. And it's just one of the realities, of this. It's good to market and try to do this, but the reality is there's going to be limited input.
The way you get public involvement is you actually put them on the committee. Like we have, the intergovernment, the elected officials that are on the committee or the employees that are on the committee. We have a hard time at the county level getting any public participation, whether that's the timing of the meetings or not understanding what the county government does. But it might be a bigger thing than just the planning committee. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, just building on what Brad just said, that was kind of the original idea behind the notion of subcommittees or working groups, is that each of us would go out and find the people relevant to work with us on a subject matter and therefore multiply our force. But it doesn't seem to be going that way, but we'll get the job done.
And maybe as the standing committee, some of that can happen as time moves on and we're not under time crunch. But yes, thanks for putting together the plan and the press release, and we'll wait until January for group photo, Pat. Anything else on item 5B? Move on to 6. Again, there's no members of the public that want to say anything. Any members of the public? Any members online? Is Terry the only one online? Okay. So moving on to number 7, committee member summary comments. Anybody have summary comments they'd like to share? Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I just think, we're working pretty well together. I mean, we have come up with different ideas and different opinions, and that's a good thing that we have different ideas and can sort out what are the best ways to go. So I'm completely comfortable with how we are set, and I don't think we're that far behind the curve. And I hope we move on forward in the new year. I'm looking forward to it.
Anybody else? Then number 8 is schedule the next meeting, which sounds like it would be a Northwest Regional Planning driven meeting for what's in their scope of work of month 4 and month 5 as the target. Do we have ideas for dates?
We don't, and we'll have to hear from Northwest Regional when they're available,
Okay.
because obviously they're working with other counties and communities. So I will email them after this meeting to find out dates.
Okay. I'll just say that first full week of January would not be good for me. So, does the timing work? 2:00? Is that okay with everybody?
I think what'll happen is Northwest will do a doodle poll of some sort,
Okay,
so their timing can match with our timing.
that will work then.
Is that what's gonna happen, Dan?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Emily.
Okay.
But we'll then allow the next meeting date to be scheduled based off of Northwest Regional Planning schedule, and hopefully we'll meet our schedule as well. So with that, then I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
No second actually needed, I think, on adjourn. So the motion carries. No vote. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.